Welcome to the Colvin Institute webinar series. This is one of the many events that the Colvin Institute hosts during the course of the academic year. The Institute was founded by Baltimore-based developer John Colvin and his wife Karen for the purpose of supporting research, industry outreach, and student enhancements for the Master in Real Estate Development program. We are fortunate to have the support of the Institute to enrich our students' academic experience. We have a nice program planned for you this evening. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya Bonsall, Assistant Director of the Real Estate Development Program, to tell you more about the program and this evening's panelists. Tanya.
Thank you, Maria. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are very excited to have a distinguished panel with us today to talk about the green building solutions in real estate development. So each panelist will do a brief presentation to talk about their experiences in the green building, followed by a Q&A. So audience, please use the Q&A or chat feature to ask questions from our panel. To begin with, just a quick introduction of our panel. First, Rokas Beresniovas. Rokas is the Director of Commercial Business for the Montgomery County Green Bank. He has over 20 years of experience in business-to-business, community, and retail environments. He also has numerous appointments to nonprofit boards for corporate stewardship and community building. Rokas was awarded the 2016 Smart CEO Washington, D.C. Executive Management Award and was a finalist for the 2015 Smart CEO Washington, D.C. Money Manager Award. Next, we have with us today Jessica Jones. Jessica is a Senior Real Estate Development Manager at Enterprise Community Development. At Enterprise, she manages several multi-million-dollar low-income housing tax credit development projects. More notably, she managed a solar installation project designed to affix 1 megawatt of solar panels across 12 properties within the enterprise portfolio. Jessica is also an appointee on the DC Building Energy Performance Standard Task Force as one of the affordable housing owner representatives. She teaches capstone course in the Master of Real Estate Development program for us, and she's also an alum of the program. Last but not the least, Kyle Wacyra. Kyle is the principal and lead engineer, energy engineer of capital efficiency. Kyle specializes in energy engineering, commissioning, and retro commissioning. His experience extends to both new construction and existing buildings and spans across several building sectors. Kyle has a passion for high-performance green buildings, evaluating system performance, and optimizing energy efficiency, identifying energy efficiency measures, conducting energy and economic savings calculation, and ultimately driving towards net zero design and operations. Without further ado, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kyle for our first presentation on energy efficiency.
Thank you, Tanya. I just want to confirm real quick that everyone can see my screen. So when you can, please let me know.
Yes, we can see your screen, Kyle.
Great. So I first want to thank the University of Maryland and the Colvin Institute of Real Estate Development for inviting me to speak to you all tonight. And the topic that I'll be discussing is energy efficiency. And so the agenda. So first, I'm going to quickly discuss, who I am and who we are as Capital Efficiency and what we do, which is turnkey energy efficiency projects or retrofits, and then explain the business case for energy efficiency, and then just really touch on the Building Energy Performance Standard, or what out in the field people are referring to as BEPS, but just a high level because Jessica will expand on that. Tanya did a great introduction, so thank you for that. So I won't dive too deep about my background, but I'm a licensed professional engineer, mechanical, and I have my master's in energy engineering as well as a few other green certifications such as Certified Energy Auditor and of course, Elite AP. So who we are is Capital Efficiency. As I mentioned, we turnkey energy efficiency projects. And so, we're built to serve the market need for streamlining these projects because there's a lot of uncertainty on how to approach these projects. So Capital Efficiency specializes in energy engineering, which consists of energy audits and retro commissioning, and energy modeling for savings calculations, commissioning either new buildings or the retrofits as they're installed, and then verifying savings through what's known as measurement and verification. We act as the owner's rep, getting a contractor on board, arranging the financing, which Rokas will dive a little bit deeper into, as well as manage construction. So you can see that we're kind of the one-stop shop that turnkeys these projects, hopefully to make it easy for a property owner that doesn't have to deal with all these entities that are listed separately, which is how these projects have been traditionally approached. So I'm going to dive into that approach and kind of explain at a high level what needs to be done from start to finish to retrofit your building to be more energy efficient. So it all starts with an energy audit, getting someone in there to identify energy saving opportunities, and then calculate the energy savings for moving forward with the recommendations. And then after that, you'll develop a scope of work for implementing those energy efficiency measures. After that, you'll select the contractor. You'll review their qualifications, make sure that they are able and qualified to install the energy efficiency measures as they're specified. Then handle the design and construction that may require permitting and everything else that goes with that by a licensed professional engineer. And then after it's been designed and built, you're going to want to commission it to make sure that it's installed correctly. So that involves testing, performance testing to make sure that it's installed correctly. And then finally, you'll do what's known as M&V, or measurement and verification, which is where you will review the utility bills to make sure that the project was successful and you did in fact realize energy savings. This is typically a requirement if you're going to receive utility rebates and incentives, of which there are many, to help finance your energy efficiency project. So what can you do to make your building more energy efficient? Well, the answer is there's a lot that you can do. And that's touching the mechanical HVAC and controls, lighting and lighting controls, domestic hot water systems, renewable energy and energy storage, and then the building envelope, which consists of the windows, roof, insulation. And don't forget, all this can be covered with water efficiency as well. Low flow fixtures are a hot topic, but to be honest, in looking at the landscape irrigation, the water use for landscape irrigation dwarfs anything that the fixtures inside the building uses. So really focus on that. But the best part of all is anything that you do to improve your building can be covered with 100% project financing. That includes all hard and soft costs, hard costs being the actual costs of equipment and installation, and soft costs being administrative fees, fees for my services, conducting energy audits, etc. And so I'll just want to touch on this real quick. Rokas will dive into it deeper, but with 100% project financing, there's no need for CapEx funds. And that's a very big, important switch in what's going on in the market. The conventional way of approaching these projects involves self-funding them and using your own money. And basically, if a project makes sense, you're going to evaluate it based on these three metrics: the simple payback, the internal rate of return, and net present value. And basically what that helps is you answer the question, what is the best use of my money? Is it this energy efficiency project, or is it that one? Or is it forgetting energy efficiency and just investing in the stock market? What gets me the better return on my money? That's what those metrics tell you. But the recommended way of doing things using PACE financing is you're not using your own money. So you don't ask that question and you don't look at those metrics. The only metric that matters is known as the savings to investment ratio. And as long as that's greater than 1, which means that you're cash flow positive, then that's when the deal makes sense. And essentially what that answers is the question is, do I save more than I owe in the repayment? So to just kind of give a quick example with numbers on that, say you can save $200,000 a year, but the financing is $100,000 a year, you're netting 100. So without spending any of your own money out of pocket, you can make your building more energy efficient and pocket savings. And so here's kind of a project example to demonstrate that. And so this building was in Newport Beach, California, just over 50,000 square feet. It was an office building. It was built in the 70s, but renovated in 2015. So it was basically a new building when I approached it in 2020. The interesting thing here is that if you'll look, the existing Energy Star score was a 95. And what that means is that this building performed better than 95% of buildings of its same size and type. And so right away, that kind of says, hey, this is already an energy efficient building. But when we went in there, we optimized their HVAC and controls, and with rooftop solar and canopy parking solar with battery storage, we were able to reduce their total cost by 93%, or $71,000 a year, equating to a total lifetime savings of over 1 million. And so in this example, the amount financed for doing everything was under $1 million, right about 925,000, with $235,000 worth of rebates and incentives available. And so below that, you'll see the cash flow. And basically what this represents, the blue bar represents the financing repayment. And the red bars are all of the savings above that repayment, all of the cash flow positive scenarios. So, and if you look at year 1, that big bar represents all of the rebates and incentives money that comes back to you, back in your pocket in year 1. So this is an excellent example of a deal that makes sense. You are saving more than you owe in the repayment. And so it makes sense to go ahead and use someone else's money to make yourself some money. Again, you don't need CapEx funds. So I want to talk about the business case for energy efficiency. So all of these benefits are realized: increasing property value, increasing net operating income, and then increasing health and human comfort, which is a hot topic, attracting and retaining tenants, and reducing carbon emissions. I'll briefly touch on each. So essentially what we're doing with energy efficiency is increasing your NOI. Why? Because your NOI is calculated as your income minus your expenses. And so by making your building more energy efficient, you're reducing your operational expenses, or OPEX, and thus you're increasing your NOI. So as a result, you're increasing your property value, because if you're marketing a building, your world involves cap rates. And so the cap rate is equal to your net operating income divided by your purchase price. And so to the right, I just show a kind of quick example of how energy efficiency increases the property value of your building. So this is a 50,000 square foot building with a cap rate of 8%. The original value is 29 million. We go in there, say you reduce your energy by 40%. So that equates to about $46,000 in savings. Say half of that goes towards the repayment and you're pocketing the other half. Well, you've increased your NOI, therefore you've increased your new value. In this case, simple example, almost $300,000. Aside from that, the tangible benefits are you're increasing your health and human comfort. Again, this is a hot topic. We're making sure that you're properly ventilating your space, you're improving the indoor environment through proper lighting, and that helps you attract and retain more tenants. You can market a green and progressive office space. You'll certainly qualify for Energy Star and LEED and other sustainability metrics well. And in the case where you have a tenant that's triple net, they'll be happy because their utility costs have gone down, so their bottom line has increased. And then ultimately, you're reducing carbon emissions by making your building more energy efficient. Every unit of energy reduced is carbon that's been reduced. So then last, I just want to touch real quick on the Building Energy Performance Standard. Again, Jessica's going to talk about this, but this is in Washington, D.C. currently, and then is coming soon to Montgomery County. It's spreading like wildfire throughout the nation. Washington State as a whole has it. Colorado State as a whole has it. New York City has it. St. Louis, and then 40 more jurisdictions that I saw recently is about to come online with it. So what it is it applies right now to buildings greater than 50,000 square feet, but in the future, it will then be 25,000 and then 10,000 square feet. So virtually every commercial building. And basically what the standard is you report your Energy Star score, which is how much energy your building has been using over a year. And if you fall below a certain score, then you have until 2025 to upgrade your building to become more energy efficient and prove through your actual energy use in the year 2026 that you have reduced your energy. If you do not meet compliance with doing so, then there is a compliance penalty beginning at $10 per square foot. So the penalty begins at 500,000 and is capped at 7.5 million. So this regulation certainly has some teeth. So I encourage and invite everyone to look at our website. A motion picture is worth 1,000 words. It kind of breaks down everything quickly in 60 seconds. So thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
All right. Thank you, Kyle. That was great. Our next presenter is Rokas, and I'm going to share the screen, this presentation. Again, just a reminder for the audience, if you have any questions, please use the chat feature or the Q&A feature. We will address the questions towards the end of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Kyle. You did a great job in providing some case studies and talking about the BEPS, which is coming to Montgomery County as well. And tonight, I just wanted to summarize what are the green banks in a country, and what that is. So if you can click the next slide, Tanya. So green banks, mission-driven institutions that use innovative financing to accelerate the transition to a clean energy and fight climate change. So it's a concept. Next slide. And the concept started about a decade ago, and it's been a long time coming. So if you look at the map of the United States, you see green states that currently have green banks, and there's a dozen of them. The yellow ones are still under consideration. So I want to mention that Montgomery County Green Bank is the first county-wide green bank in the United States. The first statewide green bank is a Connecticut Green Bank, which is very successful. And the rest of them came afterwards, and they all structured very differently. Some of them are state-based, some of them are county-based, and some of them have a completely different structures. But the biggest one I want to say is it's a New York, and they are also very successful. We started in 2016, and we are grateful that in this market we have some consistency, and we are waiting for Virginia to also do the same. Next slide. So who we are specifically as a Montgomery County Green Bank. So we are not your typical bank across the street. We don't have accounts or deposits. We are more like an investment fund, just like most of the green banks are. We are chartered by Montgomery County. However, we are an independent, not-for-profit organization. Initially, we were capitalized from the settlement funds from the Pepco Exelon merger in 2016, and currently we have about $25 million in assets. Our purpose is to accelerate investment in energy efficiency and renewable energy in the county by partnering with private sector and leveraging our capital also by partnering up with the lenders as well. And our goal is to support Montgomery County's goal to reduce GHG to 0 by 2035, which is a very ambitious goal. So we are very proud of it. Next slide. So this kind of gives you an idea of where the Green Bank stands. A lot of people think of the Green Bank as, as a bank next door, which we are not. And that's where I mentioned we are more like an investment fund. And we do work with financial institutions. We do not compete with them. We partner up with them either by way of providing loan loss reserves or co-lending, or just leveraging our capital that we have as well. We also partner up with the supporting service providers, which are like contractors that perform the job, and we really support not just the commercial sector but also residential as well. So we are like a one-stop shop for anyone to come and use us as a resource. So if you think of the Green Bank, think of like a blood bank or a food bank. It's a resource that we provide. So that's kind of the concept. Next slide. So this is the suite of our products. It's a quick overview, and DC Bank also adapted pretty much all of them to have that market consistency. So we have a commercial PACE that Kyle mentioned, which is great product for new construction, substantial rehab, or resiliency that provides 100% financing with a term of about 20 years and is repaid through a property tax assessment. And I will highlight this particular product in the next couple of slides. I think that CPACE is under-communicated in this market, and people are not taking advantage of it, which they should. CPACE sometimes is not an option, so we have another product called Clear. This is more of the conventional loan that provides 100% financing up to 12 years, secured by equipment. This product is great for retrofits, indoor air quality, resiliency, also EV chargers as well. For smaller projects, we have small business energy savings support product, and this is 100% financing for up to 5 years. These loans are very small, anywhere from $10,000 to $150,000. But the fact that we can stretch them out to 5 years really helps the cash flow for the businesses. In terms of renewable energy, we offer commercial solar power purchase agreements. Those are third-party owned and managed, have no out-of-pocket expenses, and have monthly payments and fixed per kilowatt-hour contract price on 20 to 25-year contract. Essentially, someone is leasing their roof to a third party for solar panels and buying back renewable energy at a fixed price. Green Bank provides technical assistance as well. So if there is a building owner who knows or wants to make energy efficiency improvements, but does not know where to start, In a lot of cases, we would pay for a level 1 energy performance audits to help property owner get started. So we would engage companies like Capital Efficiency, for example, to do those audits and give a roadmap to that business. Next slide. So this slide really talks about the commercial PACE program. And what it is essentially is off-the-book financing. You don't have to put that on your balance sheet. And the reason for that is because it's repaid through a tax assessment. So essentially it's a pari passu with your taxes. Every year you receive a tax bill, and if you have a CPAs, the CPAs would be on it as a loan. And generally it's 100% financing, hard and soft costs for up to 20 years. Now, Green Bank is not a capital provider because we are administrator of this program in the county. We do engage with capital providers that offer the CPAs product, and we kind of match up and get the best rates and terms for our client. Next slide. So this kind of shows you a CPAs eligible activities, and I think Kyle touched upon those. Pretty much any energy efficiency measures that you're implementing to the building would qualify. The rehab, existing buildings, retrofits, power purchase agreements, and also new construction. Some of these terms that you see will change a little bit because we do expect that Montgomery County will. We have a bill sitting at the city council, at the county council to improve some of these terms. For example, where you see new construction, 20% loan to value for exceeding the code more than 5%, that should change to 30%. We're also adding a look back period. So once new bill passes, businesses who did improvements, energy efficiency improvements, essentially will be able to in the past year, will be able to refinance that through the CPAs. Next slide. So this shows you the state of Maryland, and it shows you the CPAs, how CPAs is administered. As you see, Montgomery County, the MC Green Bank is an administrator. The Prince George County has its own administrator, and the rest of the counties, there are a couple whites that don't have this program, but most of them have the CPAs program as well. Next slide. And if you look at the whole country, CPAs started in California in 2008, and the program was widely successful, and every state is adapting it. Maryland adapted it in 2010, and the rest of the country adapted in the past decades. But you see some of these legislative initiatives since 2018 still there that hopefully will adapt the CPAs as well. And there are some that not even singing about it. But it's a great program, and hopefully we'll have more consistency within the program. Next slide. So when I mentioned the new construction and that CPAs can be used with the new construction, if you look at the first building and you look at the new construction of this building, and if you pick a conventional route, you'll see that generally when you go to the bank for a debt, 60% of that will come from your capital provider, which would be one of your capital stacks. 20% will come from the equity of the borrower or developer, and generally 20% is financed through mezzanine financing, which can be very expensive. It's between 9 and 15%. And if you look at the CPAs financing model, pretty much CPAs can replace the mezzanine financing at current rate is about 5.5 right now. And upon the sale of that building, that can be repaid as well. And the Montgomery County, it's about to increase that 20% to 30% of the capital stack, so to speak. So it's an interesting way of looking at the new construction and generally how developers get the financing versus how they should, and why CPAs is such an under-communicated product so far, and hopefully more developers will use that in the future. Next slide. This is a case study. So the board and residents of Tacoma Overlook, which has 212 units of affordable residential condominium in high-rise Tacoma Park, spent a couple years exploring the options to conduct needed energy efficiency improvements to their property. With all replacements undertaken, the property's average annual energy consumption savings is projected at almost $75,000 a year, and reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of 500 metric tons per year. So as you can see in this chart, the total cost of the project was $1.5 million. Green Bank and the capital partner financed $837,000 of that. Green Bank bridge loan with City First Enterprises was $200,000. And there are tons of incentives which people do not know about unless they work with the Green Bank and companies like Capital Efficiency, because those companies do provide those numbers as well. What are the incentives? What are the grants? And there's so many when it comes to the energy efficiency. So this condo association essentially only used $200,000 of their reserves, and pretty much became a net cash flow positive from the month one. Next slide. All right, so I guess we'll take a Q&A at the end. And Tanya, thank you very much. And I'll take it.
Thank you, Rokas. That was great. Now we'll hear from our third panelist, Jessica Jones. Jessica, do you want to share your screen?
Yes, let me give me one moment. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Good evening, everyone. I am Jessica Jones. I have a tough job because I'm following some pretty good panelists. So hopefully I can add a little more color to some of what Kyle and Rokas have already said about a few items and add a little bit more information. First off, I work for Enterprise Community Development. We are a not-for-profit affordable housing developer in the Mid-Atlantic region. We were founded officially last January. It feels like so long ago with everything that's been going on. But it was January of 2020. And we're a subsidiary to Enterprise Community Partners. You are probably familiar with them. They created the Enterprise Green Communities, the affordable housing standard that a lot of developers use nowadays. We are a pretty large company. We are number 6 nonprofit overall throughout the country. We are number 1 in the Mid-Atlantic region for affordable not-for-profit housing developers. And we have over 400 employees. Most of those employees work at our sites. We have our own property management company. So you're probably wondering, if you haven't heard of us, how did we get so big so fast? We're an integration of 3 companies. So Community Preservation and Development Corporation, Enterprise Homes, and Shelter Homes. The 3 of those companies really came together starting in 2017 and ended in 2020 to form ECD. And once we formed, we became a pretty large company. And we have close to 13,000 units. I actually think it's more than this now. Over 110 properties throughout DC, Maryland, Virginia, and Southern Pennsylvania. And we are still looking to expand. So a little bit about me, because I didn't include that. Tanya already mentioned it. I am an alumni of the program from the Masters in Real Estate Development program. I'm also a mentor to the capstone thesis students. I think this is my 5th semester doing that. I was with CPDC before I got to ECD. So I've been with the company about 9 years and started as an associate, and I'm now a senior development manager. So one of the items that I think Tanya mentioned already, and Kyle mentioned it in his presentation, is the Building Energy Performance Standard. They put together a task force to help write the rules for this standard. So if you're not familiar, DC is very, very much a trailblazer in this region when it comes to clean energy and being net zero. So the mayor, I think it was back in 2017 or 2018, but she committed to the whole city being carbon neutral by 2050, which is a very heavy lift. In order to do that, they have to implement some pretty stringent measures. So the Clean Energy and Affordable Energy Act of 2008 requires properties over 50,000 square feet to report water and energy usage to DOEE. So they were like the big buildings, the big properties were the ones that started back then. Nobody knew what was happening. It was a requirement, you had to do it, but we didn't know what they were doing with all this information until a little later. So in 2018, the Clean Energy DC Omnibus Act came out, and basically they required this standard that says, you can't drop below the local median Energy Star score per property type. And as Kyle mentioned, and I kind of show here in this graphic, I pulled from DOEE's website, BEPS 1 is the first cycle. So that's those properties, 50,000 square feet and above, and DC owned. So DC owns quite a bit of real estate. Those are the first properties that have to meet the compliance standard. So this will help DC meet this carbon neutral goal. They also have a 100% renewable goal by 2032. And by 2041, they want at least 10% of the solar to be generated in the district. So it's a lot. They're working towards it. They created this standard to help them get there. So one of the things that I do on the task force, there's probably 15 of us, and we represent different groups. So I'm an affordable housing owner group. There is a rent controlled person, commercial, industrial, DC government, Department of Housing. There's a lot of folks on this task force. And literally we started in December of 2019. And we actually still meet, and it's open to anybody if you want to join. It's usually twice a month on Tuesday afternoons. And basically what we've been doing is writing the rules that are now published for the BEPS standard. And Kyle mentioned how expensive it was. If you don't meet the criteria, the task force members were a little surprised at that price too. We did not see it until everyone else saw it. So you might be wondering, what if you're not compliant? What kind of pathways exist? So there's 4. You could do the performance pathway. That means you're reducing your site energy usage by 20%. The prescriptive pathway, which we spent a ton of time talking about, it's more of like a la carte, if you will. So like you can pick these measures, and once you fulfill these measures, it'll get you to wherever like you need to be. So for multifamily properties, the standard is 66. The Energy Star score is 66. So if you're below a 66, they have these energy cost measures that you can do to your building so that you can actually go above 66, because you have to go through this cycle every 6 years. So it's iterative. You can't just meet it once and you're done. You kind of have to keep doing better. So there's a performance pathway, the prescriptive pathway. You could do the standard target path. You just reach the standard for your particular property type. This is only available for property types above the national median. So this is kind of a small category. Most folks are either going to use performance or prescriptive, and the alternative compliance pathway, those are usually reserved for folks who have portfolios or deep retrofits. Like if you're below the standard, but you're planning to do like a major overhaul to your HVAC system and a renovation in 3 years, you can apply for like the alternative compliance pathway and go that route instead. So it's not for every property, but they do have like a specific pathway for properties that have to meet standards that way. So one of the ways you can actually fund this stuff, like Rokas mentioned, DC has a green bank. It was modeled really after the Montgomery County Green Bank. The DC Green Bank is pretty new, I think it's 2020. So they're still ramping up. They do promote PACE quite a bit as part of their offerings, and the CLEAR program, as Rokas mentioned, they have that as well. And they also have like a pre-development energy loan that you can take out to start the process. And obviously people want free money. So the mayor does have $18 million in her budget for this upcoming fiscal year for BEPS support. 10 million of that is for affordable housing. It's for projects that are going through the current DC NOFA application, or if you're applying for funding to do any energy retro or to do any rehab projects, you can also apply for additional funds to do any energy retrofits. I actually might be looking at this for one of my projects. And $8 million additional can be used for pre-development grants or energy audits, because in order to know where you need to go, you have to actually benchmark your system, which you've kind of been doing that since 2008, but most people haven't been like verifying like they should. So you really need an energy audit to be done. And most folks, most properties, unless they're the big commercial properties, they can't afford energy audits. So this money is for those owners. And then also DC has a sustainable energy utility. They're like a quasi-government group, and they get money from DOEE to do incentives, rebates, and they give out money to do major retrofits as well. So these are just a few of the funding and finance sources that you can use in the district to meet the BEPS standards if you're not in compliance. And I'm going to kind of jump to solar. So one of the things that I've done since I've been with my company is I did a solar project. So this started off really as a pet project for me, but it took maybe 4 years to get it done from start to finish. So ECD actually owns these panels. They're not third party. There's no power purchase agreement between ECD and another solar company. We actually own them ourselves. So this is really exciting. We finished installing them in 2019. It's 12 properties. They're all in DC. They're all our properties. They're 100% photovoltaic, so no solar thermal, no batteries. It's just net metered, which means they're all connected to the house meter. And it's a little over 1 megawatt of power that was installed. So it was about a $4 million project. Annually, we produce over 1 million kilowatt hours between all 12 sites. The structure to this is a little interesting because I just told you guys we don't have a power purchase agreement with an energy company, but we actually have a power purchase agreement with each of our sites. So the financing for this solar project was similar to a tax credit project where we had a solar equity investor invest equity into this deal. And we had two loans. One of the loans was based on the discount that we gave to the properties. And the other loan was based on the solar renewable energy credits. So we have a power discount to the properties of 25%. I do have a slide on how that looks. So the properties do see a small savings. ECD renewable income goes towards one of the loans that I mentioned in order to pay for the project. I just included some pictures because I don't know about you guys, but I had no idea solar panels were so big until I actually saw one in person. So that's why I put it there. I'm about 5'6.5", and I had on some like wedge heels that day. So they're pretty tall. And we also did resident education workshops at all of our sites that were receiving solar that summer. And Oxford Manor is the biggest site. It's a 400 kilowatt system. So as I mentioned, we own, we manage, we operate our solar panels, we do it all. So we entered into those PPAs with our sites at a discounted price. This does not impact resident bills directly. That's been a big learning point for our residents. They're like, I see the solar panels, I don't see a reduction in my bills. We only touched the house meters because it made it much easier to get through permitting and interconnections. So we did not tap into resident meters. So I mentioned that we gave the properties a discount. So that savings that stays at the property is actually cycled back into the property for resident benefits, like food distributions, or over the last 20 months, it's been PPEs. We even have like scholarships that were formed for students, high school students that are going to college. The amount of savings does vary per property. And the way this was funded, I mentioned the two loans that we had, the solar renewable energy credit loan. We did a power loan. I talked about the equity investor. We also had a sponsor loan, which was pretty much $590,000 in grant monies that we received for this project. We received $450,000 from DC Department of Energy in a grant that we applied for. NeighborWorks gave us some money, and we also received some money from our co-developer, NHT Renewable gave us a small grant as well. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on what SREX were, because I know people might have heard them. They might hear the word thrown around, but I know until I started doing this project, I didn't know what SREX were. I just knew they were really lucrative as far as cash goes in DC. But basically, they're not in every state. Only certain states have them. And it's a requirement based on what the requirement is for the utility providers. So, for example, in DC, Pepco, I'm using Pepco because they are the power generator in DC. They have a renewable portfolio standard, or RPS, that they have to meet. They have to meet so much of that percentage has to be renewable energy. So I was telling you guys in the beginning that DC wants to have the majority of their renewable energy produced in the district, well, at least 10%, which is a lot because Pepco is really big. So in order to meet that, they need to buy SREX from people because Pepco they don't have the capacity or really the space to install panels throughout the district to meet their requirements. So every time they fail to meet their renewable, their RPS requirement, DC charges them $500 per megawatt. So right now, the pricing, if you were to buy a SREC, is $395. So basically, Pepco says, oh my goodness, if I don't meet my renewable standard, I got to pay $500. But hey, Enterprise, you guys produce solar in DC. Can I just buy this from you and then I can claim it on my requirements? We're like, yeah, sure. I mean, no problem. They'll sell it to us for $395. They're not paying the full $500. They meet their requirements. We get the money. Everybody's happy. So that's kind of the way SREX work. The price is it's pretty volatile. I'm a little sad because when we closed on our financing back in 2018, we signed a contract for $282 per SREC. And as you can see, it's much, much higher here now. It was terrible timing, but I won't get on my soapbox. So DC's requirements are 500. Maryland's ACP has actually gone up to 80. It used to be like $20 just a couple of years ago. So it's jumped up to 80. People are very interested now in doing community solar in Maryland now. So this is just a slide that kind of goes over how SREX work, if anyone was interested. And the federal investment tax credit. So I mentioned that we used solar tax credits as part of our capital stack for this project. So when we did ours back in 2018, it was actually at 30% of eligible basis for commercial installations. Now it's at 26. And as you can see under 2A, it is phasing down unless the infrastructure bill that everyone's been talking about, maybe they'll keep it, maybe they'll push it up to 30 and keep it there. We'll see. I don't know. But as of right now, the ITC is phasing out. So it's 26% of eligible basis for all commercial installations. So all multifamily projects or office buildings, 26% of your eligible basis is possible for your solar ITCs. It is a 5-year compliance period. So it's triggered if you stop producing power or if there's a change in ownership. So it's pretty simple. Like right now we're a nonprofit, so we couldn't take advantage of the credits. We partnered with a solar equity investor in Atlanta, Georgia. And basically every quarter we have to submit production information to them. We have to submit our financials to them. And we're doing that for 5 years. They do get a preferred return. They do get an asset management fee, but in return, we got upfront capital for our project. So we're entitled to paying them these fees and doing this reporting for 5 years. And once the 5 years is up, we can buy them out and then we own the panels altogether. And this was just one of the savings, like one of the diagrams I was telling you guys about. So I mentioned that we gave our properties a 25% discount. So basically, this is one of our sites, Cedar Heights, and the sun, the solar is generated by the sun. The solar company is the owner. They bill the property for the power at a 25% discount on the PEPCO rate. So if the PEPCO rate is 13 cents, we were doing 25% off of that 13 cents. The property pays us. We take that money, the solar company takes that money to pay our loan. The savings that the property saves, because we didn't bill them for the full PEPCO rate, they still have money left over. One way we sold this to DC Department of Energy, and because we're a nonprofit, we care about our residents, that 25% savings stays at the property level to go into resident benefits. I thought this was a useful diagram because sometimes talking just doesn't do it justice, but it has done really well. So I mentioned Oxford Manor as our biggest site. They see a $20,000 a year savings. We can hire like a part-time community strategies manager who can do more resident after-school activities or anything like that our residents need as far as programming goes. We can afford to hire someone there part-time. And that site didn't have anybody at first. So it really is making a difference. It's a win-win for ourselves, our residents, and our properties. And that's all I have. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much to all three of you. This was great. So again, just a quick reminder to our audience, if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature and chat feature to ask those questions. We have a lot of questions for our panelists, so we're gonna start with that. And I know Maria has a question. So Maria, do you wanna ask your question first?
Thanks, Tanya. This question is really directed to Rokas, but Jessica and Kyle, maybe you all can jump in as well. Rokas, I heard you say that the CPACE debt is pari passu with property taxes. So does that mean when the owner defaults, if the owner defaults on that financing, that the property gets sold at property tax sale, just as if they didn't pay their property taxes? You're muted, Rokas.
Yes. So great question. So yes. So essentially, the CPACE and why some of the capital providers or lenders like this product is because it's in a super senior lien position, right? So if you have a loan, let's say let's use a local bank. Let's say you have a loan from Eagle Bank on your property, and the property owner wants to use the CPACE in making some energy efficiency upgrades. They would have to get, if there is a lien on it, they would have to get an approval from the Eagle Bank, as an example, because they have a first deed of trust to do this. And why do they need to do that? Because the CPACE will supersede the lien, because it's part of the taxes and everyone pays the taxes. And that's why it's so important that the property owners understand that. So if the lien is with the local bank, they are more than likely to give permission for the CPACE loan, because they understand the value. The value is that, hey, here's, I'm a lender, my asset is going to be suddenly improved, which is great. And also, because of all of these energy efficiency measures, the owner of my asset will have more cash flow to pay my debt much more easily, right? So it's a win-win. So why wouldn't I give the permission for building owner to use a CPACE? However, if you have a national lender, that's much harder to do so. In most cases, it's pretty much impossible, right? So that's why we have other programs like CLEAR program that Jessica was mentioning, which DC Bank adapted from us, and we adapted it from another green bank. But C-PACE is also great because if I'm a property owner and I'm selling the property, that tax liability will go to the new buyer, right? Because it's essentially a loan that is attached to the property and is not attached to my business or to me. So there's no recourse. So hopefully that answers the question, Maria.
Yeah, thanks, Rokas.
If I can kind of expand on that, and Rokas, please correct me if I misspeak here, but because the repayment on C-PACE is fully amortized and non-accelerating, in the case of a default, only the semi-annual payments for that year can be collected, not the entire loan amount. And so once that's explained to a national lender, they are more likely to engage with allowing that to supersede, because it's not the entire term that would, come due ahead of them, just the portion of that payment for that year. So
that's correct. Yeah. Yep.
Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna pass it on to Carrie. I think we do have some questions in the audience.
Yes, we have a couple of questions. I think that Jessica had pretty much addressed some of this, but I wanted to kick it to Rokas and then Kyle, and then maybe if you had anything to add, Jessica. Have government entities such as Montgomery County given thought to partnering up with a company that can create solar panels at scale, such as Tulsa, in order to accelerate green roof and renewable energy growth?
Yeah, so I think I responded to this question in the chat. So I think the county and organizations such as green banks, they try to stay neutral, right? So we usually refer to an end user at least 3 solar providers or contractors to give the quotes, and whichever the contractor the property owner likes the most or wants to work with, that's what they usually go with. So we always welcome new providers and new contractors registering with us. And hopefully I understand the question correctly. If the question is, does the green bank would give a loan for someone who wants to scale in terms of the producing the solar panels? I mean, that's something that I think more of the conventional lending or startup lending would be more appropriate to go with. But hopefully I understand the question correctly. And Kyle, feel free to jump in.
I think, Jessica, you were.
Yeah, I can't give a ton of details because I was kind of sworn to secrecy on this. It came up on a call I was on and I was like, really? I can say that some government agencies are talking to big companies about doing more solar, microgrids even, which is pretty cool. I don't think anything's inked, but I do know conversations are happening with certain government type departments.
Did you want to add anything?
Not necessarily. I shared a link from the Department of Energy in response to that question. Solar has gotten exponentially cheap. And is going to continue to do so. So it's already produced at scale, and it already surpasses coal at the utility level as cheaper. So it's just going to continue to trend that way. It's cheap now.
Great, thank you. I have another question here. And it's not directed to anybody in particular, so we can just do a sort of round robin if you like. Regarding solar PPAs, how does a property account for the fixed energy rate going up over time and potentially surpassing market utility rates? Are commercial/nonprofit properties able to negotiate a single fixed rate for the entire term of the PPA?
I can start. So if that was about like the case study, I'm not sure. But if it was about the case study, basically we had to do this like the very first year. So like, let's say it was like 13 cents, right? And so we did a 25% discount on that. You would think for the first year, you're like, okay, you got solar. So that means your power generation is going down, which is true. So what we saw is that the power is going down. We still are charging this 25% discount on the power to the properties, and we own these properties. So sometimes they don't pay us. They don't pay us on time, and we're supposed to institute like late fees, but we don't because they're our properties. But we do have loans to pay. So we looked at like, well, you know, can we also take our percentage down as well? We can, but to an extent, because we still have to pay our loans back. So we've actually started dealing with this because our panels went in service in 19. So we had to deal with it for the first time this year, really, at the end of 2020. So that's kind of how we're addressing it. It really isn't a flat rate because the PEPCO rates are pretty volatile. I hope that answers the question for me and my case study. But Kyle or Rokas, I don't know if you guys have anything else to add.
I think if you're doing if you are doing a power purchase agreement, that you can definitely negotiate the rate for the entire term, and
Up front, right? Yeah.
And if you work with a green bank, and that's why we encourage everyone to work with a green bank, because we work with the solar developers, right? So if it's a nonprofit, essentially we can say, hey, developer, this is nonprofit in our county. We can provide 70% of our capital that cost us zero at zero to you. And you charge whatever you charge, but whatever the blended rate, give us the best rate, right? Versus if you just go directly to developer, you would get the pricing that they use without any type of support from, organizations like us.
There's a lot of resources out here for affordable and nonprofit groups. And sometimes it doesn't always feel like it. You do have to dig, but they do exist.
Right, and there's also, what's better? Is it a power purchase agreement better versus owning the panels outright? And how do you calculate that, right? Because like right now, DC rates are great, but we can maybe account for that in the next 5 years. After that, we have to look, how they're gonna lower.
Mm-hmm.
So there are projections that you have to assume what is really best for you. If you're a business and you want to put a for-profit business, you want to put your panels on a warehouse, it might be great because you're also going to get 26% of the tax credit. But if you're a nonprofit, you cannot take advantage of the tax credit. So maybe a power purchase agreement is better for you. And again, that's where green bank capital efficiency will help you to identify what's best for your environment.
And that's why. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say a quick comment. A well-structured power purchase agreement should disclose the energy escalation rate, and it should closely match what the utility
It's gonna
escalation
be.
rate would be. And that's, you can reference the Department of Energy for that as well. So a well-structured deal should be a transparent with all of that.
Very true. Yeah, I know so we did our own power purchase agreements between our properties, but they were looked over with a fine tooth comb by our asset management team. So yeah, we had to disclose our escalation rates in the PPA. And as Rokas mentioned, just real quick, so we couldn't take advantage directly of the federal ITC. That's why we had to partner with a for-profit company to take advantage of it. And we're locked in with this company, or married, if you will, for 5 years.
Thank you. I have another question. It was directed to Jessica, but we can open it up to the floor too. So Jessica, you talked a lot about solar energy and the programs in place to help with financing solar equipment. Do you know if DC is taking other renewable energy sources into account, such as STES, or seasonal thermal energy storage, which basically stores heat for the winter and cold for the summer? There is a good precedent for it in Canada called Drake Landing Solar Community.
I'm actually gonna kick this to Kyle, because this is probably his wheelhouse. I have not heard this in DC, but I could be completely wrong.
This area is very innovative, and I appreciate that question. And Kyle,
Yeah.
you can answer this particular one, but I do mention, I want to mention that there are programs in DC that the DC Green Bank works with stormwater management, renewable credits as well. So if you have a property and you have, you can help to manage the storm water. Essentially, for each gallon you would get about $1.70 that you save, right? And it all goes into the market, and you sell those credits. So there's a lot of innovation around that. But Kyle, since you are from California, you can probably expand on a lot more.
Sure, but I'll speak specifically to DC in an innovative thermal energy storage application. And so without diving too deep and technical on the engineering, but you kind of referenced how, it's storing heat to be used in the winter and then putting it back to cool in the summer. And so one innovative technology in DC is tapping into the wastewater pipes, which run underground, because those are consistently about 60 degrees or cooler. And so it acts as a great way of either drawing from or storing into heat. And so it's the same concept that you've described. You're just tapping into underground water, stormwater.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I want to just switch gears quickly. So you all kind of talked about, from the business owners, what business, developers can do to practice green building solutions. So when you work with, so I just if you all can share your thoughts on what kind of energy saving measures tenants can take to generate those savings. So when you go in, Kyle, audit the buildings, is there anything that you in particular specify or ask the tenants to do to practice or save, contribute towards those savings?
Sure. So that's interesting that you asked, coming from the tenant's perspective, right? And so typically what that involves is actually a behavioral change. And so, that can involve simply, turning off the lights on your way out, or having smart strips to turn off your plug loads, your computers and things like that don't need to run while you're not there working. So those are things that tenants can do. I kind of advocate a different method. I prefer not to have anyone change their behavior, and the engineer in me wants to kind of automate and control so that people don't have to change their lifestyle. And so I go in and kind of specify these controls so that the tenant doesn't have to do anything and they'll save energy. But short answer, what can a tenant do? Turn off the lights on the way out.
Jessica, Rokas, do you guys have anything to add?
I need Kyle on my projects. It's definitely a behavioral change. And it's not only, and I like the automation component, because I was going to say, it's not even about just educating the residents, it's the maintenance staff, because we install, I'm not going to jump on my soapbox, but we design and install these really complex, really cool systems, but our maintenance techs don't know how to work them. And then you come back and there's really expensive maintenance issues because they didn't do something very basic. So I do think, it's an issue that we deal with pretty frequently, sadly.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Jessica, because there's always incentives, right? So if you come to Green Bank, it's like we would say, hey, why don't you contact your utility provider, because they have a program that someone will, an engineer will come to your property and train your employee how to do all this stuff at no cost for you. So there are resources that people are really not taking advantage of it. And I just see that another question popped up from Lex for Kyle. How small of the building has capital efficiency improved or would improve?
How small? Typically, 50,000 square feet would be on the smaller side. Our clients tend to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in energy. But really, it kind of is the juice worth the squeeze. Do you spend a lot in utility costs? So like on a residential, your most expensive bill might be $300, so just really it's a matter of perspective in your energy cost. And thank you for that question. I want to circle back real quick to what Jessica mentioned, because she's absolutely right. Maintenance is key, and operating staff being trained is key. And so that's super important. And I wanted to circle back on an example of how you can automate instead of a behavioral change. So for instance, if someone, it's a nice day, decides to open up their window, you can install a window switch that will then deactivate the mechanical system serving that space, because you don't need to if they're naturally conditioning themselves with the window open. So that's a very good example of not change behavior. Go ahead and open the window if you want to. We'll automate it so that you're not wasting energy for doing so.
I have another question. Can you all tell me which energy savings retrofits produce the most savings for a property? Is it solar panels or is it something else?
So I hate to use the answer like it depends, but it truly does. I would say the low-hanging fruit that everyone should at least be doing is LED lighting. Like if any light that you have, if it's not LED, that's the easiest thing you can do, switch to LED. Solar, your surface area, you're limited by, right? If you don't have available rooftop space, you're going to have some limitations there. So usually the low-hanging fruit is by far lighting.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on Kyle, not to advocate for utility companies, such as Pepco, but we do work with them closely, and they have so many incentives. If you have a whole commercial building and you retrofit them with LED lighting, you can get 60 to 70% back in rebates. So essentially, your cost would be so small that it's the biggest payback. You can pay it back in a year or two, and everything after that, it's all net cash flow positive for you.
And BGE has similar. They have similar like incentives too. Yep.
Yeah, and part of it is because of the regulations. So the state of Maryland, for example, Pepco. If you use a lot more, energy, Pepco doesn't make more money out of it, right? So they are controlled by the state, and they can only make so much money that by you using, more energy doesn't mean that they're benefiting the most. They actually not. They actually are incentivized to help you to get to that energy efficiency level. And the reason for that is because they sold off all of their assets that produces the energy, and they essentially are brokers, and they buy a different type of energy from other sources and providing it to you.
That explains why I keep getting mails from Pepco reminding me to switch to green financing, green serve. Every week it's in my mailbox.
I'm telling you, you should replace all of your thermostat. If you're talking about residential houses, there's incentives. You'll get reimbursed pretty much 100% of your smart thermostat. Within 2 weeks, you'll get a check. As long as you can prove that you purchased that smart thermostat. Same with the EV charging, level 2 chargers if you installed in your house. Between the state and utility rebates, it'll be pretty much free. Same thing with the Energy Star checkups that they have for your house. You'll pay $100, but they will have that inspection, and they will reimburse up to 70% to any energy efficiency measurements that will really help your cash flow personally as well. There is another question posted by David Carey. You want to read that?
Real quick, because you mentioned EVs, Rokas, and the reason why rebate money is available is because as more EVs come online, they're working at a fixed capacity. And so the utility is incentivized for you to use less so that they don't need to build new power plants to provide more capacity, because that's expensive. So it's cheaper for them to pay you to use less so they can just use what they already have to meet the needs. But as EVs come online, it's super important for buildings to reduce their use so that we can maintain the capacity that we have.
Great, thank you. I think this is a good question, and we can just do, like I said, we can just go around and everybody can sort of comment on it. And it says, how much of an impact has the pandemic had on this trend of green building in real estate development industry? Has it slowed it down or made it easier to implement in more projects due to more people being home?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, right? It's the best time to go in and retrofit because no one's really there, so you can work during normal business hours and there's no disruption to tenants. But that being said, the market is paralyzed with fear right now. And so, they don't know if people are returning back to their office or not. So everyone's paralyzed by fear and no one wants to act on anything because they're just scared still.
And on top of that, there are material shortages everywhere. So even trying to install like new HVAC or whatever it is, it's months. Yeah, costs are up and delays they're all backed up. So.
Yeah, and I think, if you look at the big picture and greenhouse gas emissions, the commercial buildings, whether they vacant or at full capacity, they still have to run, right? So they are running while nobody's there. Everyone's working from home, so the houses are producing a lot more energy, right? You're running your heat, AC, computers, and you're essentially working from home all day. So your house producing all of the greenhouse gas emissions. And here we are on a 26th COP international conference, right? Like why we are even worse now than we were ever before, and that's why, and that's, I think, why it's so important for for us, for everyone to really look at the big picture, because there is so much that we can do to improve, energy efficiency in our own houses, in our businesses. We should look for organizations that we are working for. How are they doing? You'll see that the employee satisfaction is a lot better at the companies that do care about the environment. It's not only what your building does or what you do. It's a huge big circle that affects everyone. And when we had an event at United Therapeutics last month, which it's a only net zero building in Montgomery County in Silver Spring, the head of real estate told us that they spent about 20% in premium in building that building, because it's completely net zero. When you're looking at 12, 15-story building with 26 geothermal wells underneath of the building, it's expensive. Yeah, so someone asked the question, what is the payback? Why? And the answer was, it's all in HR, right? So people tend to work for organizations that care about the environment, and they get to stick around. So it's a huge saving as well. So there's different ways of looking at this, and I just really found that very interesting, and hopefully it's relevant to this question as well.
Yeah, that's right. They were saying to attract talent, they wanted to showcase a net zero energy building because the most innovative minds would be drawn to that. And so I thought that was interesting. That's kind of outside of the dollars and cents, but still dollars and cents. Another thing, just a quick comment, ESG is super popular right now, right? Environmental and social governance, and all these company and corporate plans to be net zero energy. So it's here to stay. It's just, are you going to be ahead of it, or are you going to fall behind?
Yeah, we're nearing the end of our time here. We only have 3 minutes. I'm just going to quickly ask a final question. It's a two-part question. Just quickly, what kind of regulations and energy requirements do you feel will have an impact in the future? And as you know, we have lots of students on the webinar here. Any advice you have for the students who are, in the current real estate field or about to step into the real estate field?
I don't want to go first on this one.
I kind of said it when I started about DC. They are, I know Rokas is doing Montgomery County, but DC is really a trailblazer when it comes to their energy codes, when it comes to the BEPS compliance, when it comes to being net zero. Like, they want to be carbon neutral by 2050. They are really putting up a lot of these requirements. And just to get permits in DC, you have to, if your building is over a certain construction square footage or whatever, you have to meet GAR, the green area ratio. That takes weeks for them to review, and it's a combination of green roof and solar panels, and it's pretty extensive. So in DC, you will definitely be dealing with energy, water. Stormwater is very important also in DC, but stormwater and energy in the district. And I don't know if Rokas wants to talk about Maryland or.
Well, and so I think that's a great segue of the last question that I see is posted in the chat from Pierre. And the question is, considering all of the programs discussed tonight, what barriers exist in Montgomery County to retrofit all the buildings needed to meet the zero greenhouse gas emission goals for 2035? And I think building energy performance standards, when that passes and it actually forces the property owners to take this seriously, there will not be any barriers. And I think it's a mindset. there's a lot of pushback because, when you're actually forcing something upon someone, there's always a pushback, right? Right now it's voluntary, right? So you benchmark your property, you report it, it's all voluntary. And once it's a requirement, there's always going to be a pushback. But end of the day, the mindset needs to be, and what it should be, and hopefully it will be, end of the day, you will improve your cash flow because of all of the energy savings. 99.9%, that's the case, no matter what building you are. And you're going to improve your asset and a cap rate. And there's really no barriers whatsoever. You might have a lobbyist who represents you that's going to say, hey, where are we going to get the resources? Well, Green Bank is here to help you.
Right. And that was going to be my controversial thing to say. All these buildings are being regulated to be more energy efficient, but essentially it's kind of the government forcing them to make a better financial decision. So, like Rokas mentioned, you're going to save more than you owe. The cash flows make sense. And it's necessary because, like I mentioned before, as more and more EVs come online, the grid capacity we need to reduce to maintain. So, and advice to all those about to enter the real estate world, you're going to come out and feel like you can conquer the world. You're going to get slapped around a little bit and brought back down to earth, but stay optimistic, stay strong, and follow your passion, follow what you believe in, and you'll be successful.
Thank you all. Thank you. This was great with that. And thank you to all our attendees. Thank you for joining us and all the three panelists for your time. This was really great and very helpful. I'm sure students took a lot away and our audience as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Take care.
See you next time.
Yeah.
Here we go.